Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So, today we are going to be working in my sketchbook. It feels like forever. I don't know if it's because I've been doing more like painting videos every so often and it's not like particularly in my sketchbook. So it does feel like a very long time since I've sketched in here. So let's go ahead and crack it open and talk about what we are going to be doing today. So before we actually start, I do like using this little, I think it's like MDF board coaster and putting it underneath my sketchbook to make sure that it's nice and leveled because I do want to do some sketching and inking today. So you can probably tell from how I've named the title of this video, I want to kind of like discuss a little bit about potential plans or ideas for Inktober this year. September is like rapidly coming to a close in like about, I don't even know, like a week and a half-ish. And I'm not prepared for October by any means. There's a lot of things I'm trying to finish before, I think it's like the second week of October. So I'm trying to rush a few projects and things so that I can free up a little bit more of my time. And because of that, I'm a little bit hesitant on doing Inktober this year. So I should have probably prefaced this video earlier on and say that I am going to be drawing my OC Salwin, which you probably have noticed from the thumbnail. And I didn't really have a reason to draw Salwin in particular, but I'm kind of glad that I did because I'll talk a little bit about a certain aspect about his design that I wanted to keep in mind and when I was trying to like make him. So I ended up drawing Salwin mostly for today because I actually had no clue on what or who I wanted to draw. All I knew is that I wanted to play around with a few inking pens or pens that I had lying around to see what I would like to do for Inktober. So if you're not familiar with Inktober, it's basically a 30-day, or I guess like it's a 1 month long drawing challenge, and it's 31 days since October has 31 days. So basically from October 1st all the way up until Halloween, you'll be doing one ink drawing per day. Now obviously the rules I feel like for Inktober in general has been a little bit more flexible over the years, kind of like stretching to Drawtober, OC-tober. Some people do more like digital work rather than traditional work, so it's like very much just, I think, a time where a lot of artists take the opportunity to do some sort of month-long drawing challenge. Also, for inking right now for the first drawing of Salwin, I am going to be using the Ohuhu Fineliners. I do use 0.3 and 0.1 for the majority of it, but once I start to work on Salwin's sweater, I will switch to 0.7 because I wanted to fill in my blacks or some of the darker colors and values a little bit more quickly. But back to Inktober. So a lot of artists make their own prompts and stuff for Inktober, OC-tober, whatever art challenge that you want to do for the month of October. Or if you're not really wanting to, you can definitely just do like it very leniently, I guess. So maybe you draw every other day or draw whenever you can, draw for 5 minutes, whatever it is, and you kind of make up your own rules. But the premise of Inktober specifically is to be focusing on using ink. Now, like I mentioned, some people do kind of like a digital version of that, but I feel like a lot of people still kind of take the traditional route, so using fine liners, using markers, using ballpoint pen, needlepoint pen, gel pens, like all those. And I wanted to experiment today, so I mentioned earlier that I'm using the Ohuhu Fineliners, and I actually really enjoyed using these. And the main reason for that is kind of like Salwin's outfit. So I talked a little bit about this at the very beginning, or I kind of like alluded to it, is the fact that Salwin's design in terms of like color palette and or just like, I guess like the patterning in his clothing or like the type of clothing that he wears is something that I really enjoy drawing and shading. And I've mentioned in previous videos, the purpose of Salwin is kind of to be the comfort character, or the character that I feel the most comfortable drawing, because I want him to embody all the things that I enjoy doing when drawing. So I like chunkier clothing, I like characters with glasses, typically darker, fluffier hair. I don't know, kind of more like soft boy aesthetic. And I think I mentioned this on a live stream. I never really talked about like a canonical height for him, but I actually imagined him not being tiny and small, despite that Draw Your Squad video that I did somewhat recently of him being super tiny and intimidated by my other OCs. I actually imagine him to be fairly tall. And I don't know. I really do like that idea of like a soft, but like I guess he's not like exactly bulky by any means. He's very lanky, probably just like longer legs for the most part. But I do like the silhouette of like either long legs and like very top heavy looking upper half. So that's why I kind of wanted to build up his sweater and stuff as much as I could. And I just like kind of like soft boy, but he's not tiny. He's just like a tall, quiet kind of character, if that makes sense. But I don't know. He's not exactly stern. He has like a very cute face, if that makes sense. I'm like merging too many things and getting off like on a very different tangent right now. Because I could talk about like stoic characters that are like very kind and sweet, but they're like, you know, not very talkative and they seem very scary. That's another trope or like character type that I really enjoy. But I've always imagined Salwin being more on like the taller side. Just because like I mentioned, the weight distribution of bulkier clothing on top and kind of like more fitted pants or like more of a leaner build for like his bottom half. I just like that silhouette a lot, especially for something like very comfy, very, I don't know how to explain it, just oversized clothing that I really like. But that's besides the point. Like I said, that's going on a completely different tangent. So the way how I always imagined, at least when I was designing Salwin, I like chunkier clothing because I like shading and rendering and I don't know, just being able to build up that weightiness and adding like shadows and like other colors into the cardigan and the sweater is just always fun. But I also wanted to have a good balance between like lighter and darker colors. So either his cardigan was going to be super dark and his sweater going to be like very light, or kind of like on the flip side. So in this case, I ended up making his sweater closer to his hair color, and then he has more of like a sandy beige, softer cream color for his cardigan with some stripes here and there of like a very soft orange, kind of burnt orange color, but it's like more pastel. But it gives me a lot of room for kind of like building up folds whenever I sketch with like pencil or anything like that. But also the distribution of value allows me to really push contrast if I really wanted to. So when I was doing the first drawing of Salwin, which we ended up finishing, and I was trying my best to figure out how I wanted to do the inking, I just had a lot of fun playing around with just Salwin's contrast in his clothing. So being able to leave some more sparse areas to make the clothing seem lighter or hitting kind of like, you know, getting hit by light so it has a sense of form in a way, but then having a little bit of hatching to give a little bit of texture and kind of like adding in a light version of like the patterning on his sweater. So I just had a lot of fun hatching and playing around with lines and just, you know, I just want to be able to learn how to do more inking in a way without relying on pressure sensitivity, if that makes sense. So I'm very comfortable with using a lot of like dry mediums, or let's say specifically pencil, because I'm able to slowly build up value with like, if I use less pressure, it's a lot lighter. If I use harder pressure, you can build up the value to be very, very dark. But oftentimes working with some sort of fine liners or even pens, unless you're like flicking the pen to get very sparse lines, if that makes sense, like it kind of tapers and thins out so you can get some texture and not have some very harsh lines. It's a little bit harder to rely on just like pressure sensitivity. So having a good idea of where you want to have your values and trying to translate it by doing like hatching, or you can do stippling or cross hatching, like all that jazz. So I just wanted to play with inking throughout this entire video. So for our second drawing of Salwin, I did go ahead and switch to a different pen. So this is my favorite pen. It's the Energel CLENA, and there's like a bunch of different inks that you can put into the particular like body model. And for me, I like anything that has like the needle point type of pen, and I believe this is more like a gel ink, and it doesn't really bleed whenever I use alcohol markers. It doesn't really bleed all that much if I'm using like pencil on top or anything like that. So it's kind of like my go-to. I find that it dries super fast, and this one is very much like less line weight variation that you can get with it compared to something like a fine liner, where I feel like the tip is a little bit more squishier and is able to have that flexibility to have line weight variation from like flicking the pen and getting those sparser, thinner lines. So because of that, I feel like at least more recently, whenever I ink with this particular pen, I have been trying my best to learn how to incorporate more hatching or different ways of shading, especially for something like Salwin, who has like darker hair, being able to at least find a way to shade and ink it in a way that doesn't make his hair just look like one completely flat shape, which I'm not against. I would love to have some sort of like marker or fine liner or something that can fill in quickly, which is why like I've been gravitating towards using like those calligraphy pens. I just haven't found the right ink to replace those particular calligraphy pens, because more recently I found that they've been getting a little bit dry, and then I refilled it with a different ink and it's become not as opaque. So I might see if I'm able to find a different ink. I don't want to use India ink or like those Chinese sumi ink because I believe it clogs the brush or like bristles. So I have to kind of play around. Otherwise, I'll have to double check to see what is inside like my Pentel pocket brush pen, because I think that one has like normal flowing ink for the most part. Kind of like getting off track. I do think that I might take a very simple approach to this year's Inktober. I'm still a little bit stuck on whether or not I'm going to stick with like my own prompts. Maybe I'll do OC-tober again, or I'm gonna maybe do Niji-tober, which has like prompts, probably just drawing all the livers, I'm assuming. I didn't join, I think there was one last year. I did do my own Niji-tober 3 years ago, so I'll show you guys a little bit at the very end, because this is from a sketchbook, probably, I think it's like my blue epiphyllum. So it's like a very old notebook design. It's one of my very first ones that I did, and I did a very simple method of basically tracing the outline or the silhouette of a sticky note, which is about like, what is this, maybe 3 inches by 3 inches or something like that. Maybe it's 4 inches, I don't even know, I just measured it. So sticky notes are about 3 inches, like a 3-inch square, so 3 by 3. And I would actually use like a lighter pencil and just kind of like sketch out the little square really quickly. And if I don't have a lot of time, I'll make sure to keep that drawing very simple and within my 3 by 3, so that I don't feel too pressured to do something extravagant or something larger. And I think for me, a post-it note size drawing is a little bit more manageable for myself. But if I do have more time, I just try to incorporate the little square silhouette outline, whatever it is, into the piece. And then if I have more time, I'll just like flesh it out and just do a lot more for that one. But for now, I think that is what I am going to be going for. I'm also considering, I have like this little craft tape. What do you call it? I guess it's just tape. So it's in a roll, I guess. So I was thinking maybe I'll just trace the roll, like the inside of it, so it's like a consistent shape, and maybe use that as an outline, and maybe we can just use the circle as like a little frame or a border for our Inktober drawings. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm still considering what I want to do for it. But before I jump back into kind of just my thoughts on whether or not I'm going to be committed into doing Inktober this year, because I think I won't decide until like Inktober actually starts, which might be a bad idea to start off a little bit not prepared, I guess. But the first drawing that we're doing for Salwin, I ended up sketching with just graphite because I thought I was going to continue with the Energel CLENA pen and then just do some of the shadows and shading with a pencil to kind of give it more of that monochromatic look and not relying on too much of hatching, and we can kind of give like a smoother finish for our shadows and stuff. But I ended up changing it and going for ballpoint pen, because I think ballpoint pen is like very versatile, and I've talked about this before that the Pentel RSVP is my favorite in terms of like sketching, because it mimics a mechanical pencil or just like a normal pencil very, very well. You have a lot of control with like building up values, which I do take advantage of. And the fact that the Pentel RSVP, at least for me, the way that it dispenses ink, it never really leaves like large ink blobs by any means. It's also very much on the lighter side, so it doesn't dispense a whole lot of ink, so it gives me a lot of opportunity to slowly build up my values. And the lines are somewhat fairly thin compared to some other ballpoint pens that might feel a little bit more bulky. So because of that, I can get a little bit more detail. I had a lot of fun doing Salwin's eyes because of that. I think they look very pretty. They kind of have like that shoujo-esque kind of hatching look to them. So it's been kind of my favorite to do, especially for Salwin. And the ballpoint pen just works really well for that. But the Pentel RSVP is kind of like on the lighter side, and because of that, whenever I have to build up value, it does cramp up my hand quite a bit. I've talked about this in the past before, but because I've done like a lot of tiny writing when kind of like growing up, whenever I did my notes for school, I had like a death grip on my pencil because I wanted to write everything very tiny and very neat so I could cram everything all together, but I was very particular kind of like on how things looked. So because of that, I think I gave my hand this uncomfortable position if I hold my pen or pencil for a long time and I'm having like a very hard grip, which I often do if I have to push really hard on the pencil or pen. So because of that, I did end up switching to the Papermate pen, which is the one that I'm using right now. It's like the Papermate Inkjoy, and typically it actually dispenses quite a bit more ink, so I would actually be able to push the values a lot easier. It does leave a little bit more of like those ink blots or blobs every so often. For some reason, this one is just not as juicy as usual, so I was struggling to kind of build up value a little bit later, so I'll switch back to the Pentel RSVP. It might be also the paper that's like not accepting the ink super well and it's gliding a little bit too much on the kind of like the top of the page. But I think that's it in terms of the drawing. I end up just like doing one last chibi. I'll throw some other smaller things on top of our spread, and I think that's it for like the sketching session. So general consensus on whether or not I'm doing Inktober is kind of like undecided still. I want to push myself and do Inktober. I think what's stopping me right now is the lack of prompts. I've done flowers in the past and I kind of want to do that again, but maybe do like spin the wheel for all of my OCs to see who I'll draw for that day, and that might keep it a little bit low pressure. That, or maybe I'll just like exclude the flowers and just spin the wheel to see which of my OCs gets chosen. And I might even include like Arakan and Anka into the mix. Or yeah, I think I might do that. Maybe I'll throw in flowers, who knows. If I can find like a flower list, maybe I'll do that and then just leave the wheel for randomization. And then we'll see, because I don't know. I was thinking like, if I do it random on the days that like I know I won't have energy for, I feel bad for the OC that I might not do like a lot of drawing for. I don't know. Maybe I'll just try my best not to put too much pressure on myself when kind of doing the little sessions for whenever I have time to do Inktober. I've also mentioned this in the past, but I do try my best to draw every day, so I feel like I should be able to at least sit down and do like 10 to 15 minutes every day at least to do some sort of Inktober drawing. Oh, also, so this is the old sketchbook from about 3 years ago, and you can see that some of them have like a very prominent square outline around some of the characters. So this is when I did Nijitober back when it was 3 years ago. I guess it's like 2021, 2022-ish kind of era. And yeah, you can see that these ones, so the one of Millie and Reimu, I had a lot more time and I felt more comfortable drawing maybe more of like waist up for them, so I ended up drawing more for those ones. Later on, I ended up getting tired of drawing little tiny sticky note versions, so I ended up switching over to drawing like a more of a full size and doing a lot more of different kind of inking instead of just using the water-based markers. I'm going to try my best to have some solidified plan maybe for next week's sketchbook video, so next Monday, so I can share with you guys kind of like my plan as well as just the materials, maybe the prompts. I can't guarantee that I will be sharing the prompts because like I mentioned, I might do the randomized OC route, so it might be a little bit hard for me to prep you guys in advance unless I roll all of the choices read out like from the beginning and just like have them pre-planned for the week. I don't know. I'm not too sure. I will come back and I will have a more solidified plan, hopefully, and I'll be a little bit less stressed so I can actually prioritize that a little bit more. Also, I ended up putting little stickers of Salwin in my sketchbook to fill up the space, add a little bit of color here and there. I keep like extra photo cards and stickers of my OCs in this like little after 8 tin because I think it's cute. But I think that's it for today's video. I know I didn't really solidify anything in this video in terms of like my Inktober plans. So stay tuned next week, hopefully for a video talking more about what I'm going to be using and my plans for Inktober. But for now, I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!